Real estate investing is the greatest equalizer. It's not based on who you are. It's not based on what your grades were. It's not based on whether you have a great education. And certainly not based on how tall or how short you are. It's based on your work ethic and are you willing to learn and grow. Today, we're talking to Torrence, how he's building a real estate empire while keeping a full-time job. So Torrence, before we get into investing, man, what do you do full-time as far as your job?
So my full-time job is I am a senior success coach at National Louis University, where I'm essentially a school counselor / like academic advisor, I would say.
So you're helping people get through college, figure out what are the best careers they should be picking, what are the classes they need to be picking. That's kind of your full-time job.
Correct. So
how did that lead to real estate for you? I mean, what was kind of the motivation? What was your reason?
So my parents, more so a little bit about my story. So my parents passed away back early in the pandemic. So I lost my mom in 2020, and then I lost my father shortly after in 2021. And then I ended up doing mastery in 2022, essentially. So for me, I just looked at it as motivation because they bust their tails pretty much their entire lives, you know. So, they worked until they were very old, and by the time they were able to retire, that's when they got sick, rarely, pretty much like around like their 50s, I would say like 40, 50s, and then going into their 60s is when it really took a toll on them. So to me, it just really provided motivation. I mean, seeing them bust their tails their entire life, and then by the time they were able to ride off in the sunset, they essentially got sick. So for me, I wanted to kind of change that narrative. Like for me, by the time I get old, I want to already be done. I want to ride off in the sunset before I become old, because tomorrow's not promised. I mean, that's one thing that I learned going through the different adversity that I've been through over the last few years, is that I want to retire when I'm young. I personally don't want to wait until I'm 60s, 70s to retire. Like, I seen what they did, and I want to still be able to do things, with my future family while I'm still young, and that's why I feel real estate comes into the picture.
So how old are you at this point, age-wise?
32. I started off mastery when I was 30, to be
30,
exact.
okay.
Yep.
So let me ask you this, man, that you show up around us, right? I mean, there's a lot of, obviously, information you can get on YouTube University.
Yes.
Right? How you can make millions overnight.
Which
right?
I have. I watched some of those videos.
Right. Okay. So what was it that at the 3-day, you ended up coming to a 3-day?
Correct.
Right. What was it that was like, okay, well, this is not just BS. This is something that is possible for me. What was that?
It's funny how I just stumbled into the 3-day. Like, I literally just Googled real estate classes in my neighborhood, and a lot of different ones showed up, but I knew I wanted to do something that was in person because of the way I learned, and I ended up learning about the 3-day. So I actually showed up to the old location that you all had. Okay. And then I remember seeing Lori there. Okay. I just came in with some sweatpants on. Like, I didn't even know it was a 3-day during that same weekend.
No kidding.
I didn't know. I just walked into the office, and Lori was like, I just came in to get information. And she was like, we have a 3-day going on this weekend. I'm like, what the hell is a 3-day? Okay. So she told me a little bit more about it, sent me the location for it, where I drove up to the hotel, and then I ended up meeting up with Harry Owens, who's obviously part of Mastery and part of your program. So, and he really took me under his wing. Okay. And told me, hey, man, one, obviously change what you're wearing, because I came in with sweats and some slabs on. He's like, hey, man, come in tomorrow and, just join this program. Check it out, man. And he was showing me a little bit about some of the projects he had going on in South Holland, I believe, a real good flip he had. And he really provided, that mentorship to me early on. I'll be honest, like, so when I went into the 3-day, I gravitated towards the first black person I saw. Because I wanted to see somebody who looked like me to say, okay, I want to see if he can do it too, because that was inspiration. Like, if this guy can do it, I can do it too. And then just learning a lot about his story and how humble he was, that definitely motivated me and gave me the confidence to end up joining the 3-day in July 2022.
Okay, got it. Yep. So let me ask you this, because this is something we've talked about, right? Touchy subject. Very. But it's the truth, right? And why is it in the black community? Right, and it doesn't matter whether it's Hispanic, whether it's Indian. Really, all of us at the end of the day, we want to do well.
Right.
Right. We want to do right by our parents. We want to be an inspiration. Right. But I always feel this is, why is it in the Black community there are not as many people gravitating towards real estate, right? Truly putting their head down, going to work in real estate. Is it lack of leadership within the community that people are not really kind of showing the example? Is it because there's somewhere lack of confidence? What do you think is the problem? Why are there not more people like you?
It's a lot of different things, man. For me, growing up in the west side of Chicago, going to public school system, like, I didn't learn this information. So the first time I was introduced to real estate was mastery. Essentially, like, yeah, I watch YouTube videos, but a lot of that stuff is for entertainment. Like HGTV, a lot of that stuff is for entertainment. You mentioned that. So for me, I think it's just a lack of information. I think a lot of folks are comfortable just working a 9-to-5 until, my parents were a product of that. They've always thought about entrepreneurship, but I think entrepreneurship by nature is scary. 9-to-5 is comfortable. You have a cushion. So being able to take a risk and bet on yourself, that's very scary for a lot of people. I didn't know the information. So I think another thing, too, is for folks who do make it up top, I honestly think there is a crabs in a barrel mentality, and that's with a lot of different cultures. And I don't speak for the Black community, but I do know that there's a certain thing where a lot of folks who make it to the top, a lot of folks want to drag that person down or don't want to share certain information when they're at a certain position. So kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier, that's why I gravitated so much towards Harry, because he could have just been like, man, I don't have to tell you anything. I got this. You trying to get to where I'm at, so I'm just going to save the information for myself. Whereas he really took me under his wing, so I want to be the Harry for the next Black person. They don't even have to be Black. Anybody in Mastery, over the last 3 days, I've been able to give back. A lot of my properties have been featured where I don't care how you look. I just want to see everybody win at the end of the day, and I think there's a disconnect.
Yeah, because, I asked that question for a reason that, you see a Black little kid, right? And they're like, oh my God, I want to be a football star, right? I want to be a basketball star. I want to be a great musician, right? Why? Because they see people, right, that you in NBA, pro ball, certain things.
Social media.
Right, social media, where you're like, man, that's badass, right? Who doesn't want that? Like,
I wanted to play basketball.
Of course, we all want to be, the next Michael Jordans of the world.
I was 5'6", so I didn't
exactly.
get any letters. None.
Yet statistical odds in any of those things, be it music, be it any sort of sports, are 0.00001%. Right? That's just a fact. Yet success in business actually has lot better statistical odds, right? And why real estate, I always feel it's the greatest equalizer, because, nobody cares what your credit score was.
Right.
What your grade card was when you were in school. Nobody cares what your ethnicity is. Nobody cares how tall you are. Nobody cares if you're a goddamn midget. It's nowhere on a loan application. Right? All that counts is, can you learn certain skill sets, and can you start building a network of people that are willing to do business with you in terms of, be it rehabs, be it do loans with you, right? And it's a knowledge-based skill set, and it doesn't matter where you go, right? You could be in Alaska, or you could be down in Texas or Florida. Real estate is real estate at the end of the day, right? So you go to the 3-day, and we were talking about a concept, which is, number one, do not quit your job.
Absolutely.
Keep your job, start building it on the side, right? Did that whole concept make sense? Because nowhere during the 3-day day I say, hey man, tomorrow you're going to be rich, Torrence. Did that number one concept make sense to you?
No. I mean, the concept made sense, but I knew for a fact I was going to keep my job.
Right.
Because I knew, as you mentioned in the 3-day, you have to have a certain level of reserves when you get into real estate, because you never know what's going to happen, essentially. And I'm paying rent from where I'm staying at now, so you also need cushions to pay for, whether it's private money loan, hard money loan, you still need to pay that mortgage on the property as well. So that's why it's important to have that extra job on the side as well.
And in your case, you're counseling students on how to basically, get through college.
Correct.
What's the most efficient way? I mean, you could literally be driving Uber. You could be a doctor. You could be a lawyer. It makes no difference. What you do for a living, and this is something a lot of times, and I come from the Indian culture, right? It's like if you're not a doctor, if you're not a lawyer, if you're not a professor, you're nobody, right? It makes no being a doctor, being a lawyer, being a quote unquote a professional
Right.
is a way to make a paycheck. It's no different. Now you're going to get paid higher because you have a higher skill set.
Right.
But it is no difference than somebody driving Uber or somebody being a plumber or somebody being a barista at a coffee shop. Makes no difference. That's a way to make a living. And depending on the profession you choose, you're going to be paid based on how hard it is to replace you.
Right.
Right. And this is something that a lot of times I think what we do is we beat ourselves up. At least I used to. Right? Then, oh my God, I didn't achieve X, Y, Z. And so then how am I going to be successful? What right do I have to be successful because I didn't go get through college or I didn't do X, Y, Z? You ever had those doubts when you got started?
About real estate, as far as me.
Or where does this, because today when I meet you, you're a self-confident dude, right?
try to
Was
be.
this the same thing, say 2 years ago, before you did your first deal?
I would say no. Joining Mastery, I had, and I still do to an extent. It's gotten a little better, but I've always had imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And for those of you who know about imposter syndrome, it's where you feel like you kind of don't belong in the space intellectually. And I felt that joining Mastery for the first time, like I'm around contractors, I'm around like lenders, like attorneys, other investors as well who started prior, and they knew a lot. At least that's what I've seen. I used to sit in the back of class. You remember? You probably don't remember. You probably didn't see me when I first started in the summer. And it wasn't until I came to the second class. Miss Rakia actually was a huge motivation, and she was very big on. She's part of Mastery, and she told me, "Hey, Torrence, go back to class. You haven't learned anything yet. Like, go back to class. Always continue to learn." And that really hit me because as someone in education, we always tell our students to be a lifelong learner. And I think the same thing applies in entrepreneurship and real estate as well. So the second time I came to class, which was during the November 22 class, that's when I started to sit more in the front. A lot of the information you were telling us, it was starting to resonate more because I was more engaged. And that's when I developed the confidence to get my first property, which was in Chicago Heights.
This is so important, guys. And this is so important because, listen, a lot of times people think I'm very outgoing. I'm not. I'm actually... if I'm in a new environment, I do not like to talk to people. I don't. I'd like to talk to people who already agree with me, who already think the way I do, right? And I know, now I can turn it on whenever I want, right? But I have to get out of my comfort zone, right? We are where we are because of what we know or because of what we don't know. And so if you want to get out of that and you want to basically have more, achieve more, accomplish more, clearly, if what you know is not getting you there, then you got to get out of your comfort zone. Yeah. And for you, it was just showing up first. And it's okay to sit back at the class and pretend that, oh my God, right? And the imposter syndrome, I think we all have that, right? We all have that. Now, as long as you acknowledge it and understand it, that it's okay. And then you move from the back of the class to the front of the class, and then you suddenly start asking questions. And sometimes it seems, well, should I ask this or not? Is it a dumb question?
I felt that all the time.
Oh my God.
All the time.
See, a lot of things, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's like with me, flying. A lot of the dumb questions, quote unquote, right, that I would ask when I was learning how to fly, I understood a year and a half, 2 years later. Right? Because what they were saying, the answer didn't change. But what they were saying about flying, and I'm like, well, why do they do it this way? Wouldn't this be better? Well, clearly, I didn't understand at the time what they understood. And so it took me to develop a skill set a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, what they said now makes sense. And this is with anything, in any that a lot of times it takes time because sometimes you need layers of knowledge to understand. Like a kid who's in first grade is not going to understand generally what's taught in 8th or 9th grade. Not that the kid is dumb, right? It's just that they haven't gotten there yet. right? That's all it is, right? We all have layers of understanding, layers of concepts you have to understand before you're going to understand trigonometry, or before you suddenly can do algebra, before you can do calculus. It's like you can't say, you try to teach somebody who has never gone through basic math skills and they say, well, you're dumb because you don't understand calculus. No, I'm not dumb. I just haven't gotten there yet. Right? And I think a lot of times learning is based on layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And as you have learning, as you have experience, as you build you're like, oh my God, now this all makes sense. And then you come to a point where you're like, oh my God, how does this concept not make sense to you? Well, the advantage you have is you've already been on that journey. You've already gone through that process. And a lot of times when somebody, if it's you or somebody asks a question, what would be, I'm like, man, I thought we already went over it, right? Yeah, but I went over it 50 times, but this is the first time you're actually understanding it. You may have heard it. Happens to all of us. We hear information and it's like, you said that? No, man. No, because you were focusing on something else that was said.
Right.
You're trying to make sense of it, and now you're like, oh, wow, that makes sense, right? And now as you start building that confidence, you're like, oh, my God. So your first property, right? Because that's kind of the critical one,
Yes.
right? Your first property, how did you go about finding that property?
That was MLS.
Okay.
So on-market property.
Off market. So what we always try to tell people is that, number one, first figure out what areas you're going to invest in, right? And for you didn't have a lot of savings. You didn't have a lot of money.
Correct.
Right? And so that's the reality. And sometimes this is the other thing that I want to talk about, because a lot of times we will beat ourselves up. Well, I don't have money. Right? Well, I am this, I am that. We give ourselves labels, right? And those labels and our self-limiting beliefs stop us. Did you ever feel that, hey man, yeah, maybe it works for Harry, right? Maybe he's an oddball, but I'm not sure I can get a loan. Who's going to trust me? They don't even know me, right? I look like this. Were there those types of thoughts that came to your mind?
For me, no. I always knew that it was a numbers game.
Okay.
As long as the deal makes sense, that I was eventually going to find a lender. But I think for me, I did had a little bit of thoughts, more so in terms of how was someone new going to trust me? Because the whole aspect of private money lending, like, I wasn't taught that in school. So that concept was extremely foreign to me. I didn't even know that existed.
So hold on. Explain to a lot of the audience, because for a lot of the audience, and this used to drive me nuts, right? I heard people in real estate say, well, when you have a deal, the money will show up, right? And I'm like, this is bullshit. This is the biggest BS ever, that the money will show up, right? And it's like, when you're ready, a teacher will appear. This is just how life is. And these are principles of, be it the Bible, be it the Quran, be it Gita, whatever that's just how life works, right? That as you start doing the activity, you may not find them at the first thing, but you will find that if you seek, right? And it's kind of similar with private money, right? So for people who don't know, what is private money exactly?
I'll try to explain to the best of my ability. So it is essentially where you find a lender, and I think it's 12 points.
Yeah, no. Don't worry about the points and
the
stuff.
points, okay.
But
Generally,
who are these lenders? Are these big companies, Wall Street companies that are lending? So who is a private money lender?
It could be anybody. It may be people in your family. You never know. It could be someone at your church, depending on what you believe in. It could be a family member, but it was just really a network of folks that I've met being a part of Mastery. And I think the biggest thing with them is making sure that the deal works, because they get a kickback on their end. Of course, they get interest, but then they also pour money into you, depending on the situation, where you're able to get purchase and rehab price fully funded, which to me, I never knew that, because I think the original concept of buying a home for the most part is putting down 20-25% for the most part. So knowing that I don't have to put anything down, but more so pay interest throughout the duration of the loan, I never knew that it existed. I thought that was fake.
Right. No, and this is, so not only are you borrowing the money for the purchase, but they're giving you the money for the rehab. Now, for that to happen, the numbers have to make sense.
Correct.
What do we mean by numbers have to make sense? And this is where sometimes people are like, well, I got this deal. Okay, great. Good for you. And how come I can't find private money lending? Well, the numbers are tight. Right. Not that it's not a good deal, but if somebody's going to give you all the money to buy the property, they're going to give you all the money to rehab the property. then guess what? They want to make sure that if you screw it up, if something goes wrong, then they can take the property back and still do something with it.
Correct.
Right? Because a regular bank, will they give you a loan on that up front?
No.
No. Will a hard money give you a loan like that?
No.
No, they won't, right? So you have this group of what's called private money lenders. Now think about this, hypothetically. Let's just say you have a rich grandmother, right? Or rich uncle. And they're like, oh, I want to help my nephew. I want to help my niece, or I want to help my grandchild, right? Why would they give you a loan on something? Why? Because of one reason. They want to help you. Not that they want to lose money, happens time to time, but they want to, but if you had a rich uncle that was a business person, say, hey, I want to help my nephew do well. What are they going to do? They're going to look at a business concept you may have. It may be anything. And they're going to say, okay, does this have viability? What are they doing? They're doing market research to say, okay, is this the character of the person that's going to do the right thing? Do they have business viability? Okay, I'm willing to put up money.
It's pretty much like Shark Tank.
It's pretty much like Shark Tank.
Yeah.
It's just within, but what happens is, so let me ask you this. A lot of times you today have done 2 deals now, right? Now, could you talk to somebody outside about private money?
Yes.
Yes.
My friends ask me about it all the time.
Okay.
I'm like the person though.
Right.
with my
Because
friend group.
now you have the confidence, and not only do you have the confidence, why do you have the confidence? Because you've done it.
Correct.
You're like, oh my God, man, if I find a good deal and you got $150,000, I will give you a lien against that so that your money is safe, and I'm going to give you interest. Every month, you're making way more money than you're going to get sitting in the bank. And when I pay you back, you're going to get some points on the front end. You're going to make 15, 16% return. I make money, and then guess what we do? We repeat the process over again. So they benefit, you benefit. It's not a one-way deal. It's got to be in business. A lot of times people think, well, I give you money. What do I get for it? Guess what? If you're not benefiting and the other person's not benefiting, it's not a good deal.
It's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street, right? So deal number 1. You went in the MLS. Now, you live about an hour from where you found your first property.
Yeah.
Right? Most people be like, man, shit, I'm not going that far. I got to go an hour? This is ridiculous.
Man, you got to drive where the money at. You got to drive where the money, especially if you're starting off. You can't really be, what's the word? I can't think of words right now, but pretty much you can't be picky on your first deal. Like, you got to chase the money. You got to chase the deal where it's at. Like, I now reside in Downers Grove. I wish I was at a point where I could afford properties here. Maybe not yet at this point in mastery. Maybe eventually down the line I can. But, I have to go a little bit further in the south suburbs to find properties that I can afford. But also, I was also thinking as a private money lender as well. Even though I had never even gotten a deal yet, I was also thinking if I was a private money lender, like, I put myself in their shoes. Like, if I'm a new person in real estate, let me start off somewhere small first, work my way up so I can build that trust with private money lender, and then work my way up. I'm not just going to right off the top, I have no property, and then I'm telling them, hey, I got this deal for X amount of money out in Naperville. They're going to look at me like I'm crazy. So, like, let me work my way up, build that confidence so I can eventually go off in different BA areas, essentially. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. See, a lot of times what people want to do is they've not done nothing, and suddenly they're like, oh, I heard the speaker. He said, don't buy single-family houses, man. Let's just do 100-plus units. Man, come on, dude. You're a couch potato. You've never gone off the couch, and tomorrow you're going to go run a marathon. Guess what? Number 1, it's not happening. And number 2, if you do manage to make halfway, you're going to kill yourself. Right? It is not, but yet you say, hey, I got 4 months. I am fat. I'm out of shape. I'm not where I want to be. In 4 months, I want to run a marathon. I may have to jog. I may have to sit down some, but I want to do that. Is that doable? For a big percentage of population, that is doable. Why? Because you're going to walk a block. Next day, you walk 2 blocks. Next time, you walk a few miles, right? And you're building in a short amount of time. You're stacking small successes to build confidence so you can accomplish a lot, right? And that's kind of exactly the step you took, which was, hey, I'm going to go. If I have to drive an hour, I'm going to drive an hour. Because if I'm willing to give 40 to 50 hours every single week, for the rest of my life to make a fixed paycheck, what am I willing to do for myself? And that's the question a lot of times we have to ask. So you go find this property. I would say a C area, C minus area.
Yeah, around there.
Right? Around there, because that's all at the time. Now, obviously, everybody wants all the A premium areas. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Right? But you got to start where you got to start. Right? That's just what it is. What did you buy that property for?
I believe I bought it for $40,000, if my memory serves me correct. Yes,
$40,000.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in Chicago, people who are listening outside of Chicago, so this would be, so you A area is going to be affluent, aspirational. B is going to be kind of next door to it, right? You live in a B area, right? You actually now live in an A area, I would say, right? Downers Grove is an A area now, right? But B would be next to that, and C are areas that have some crime. They're going to have some maybe economic issues. They're going to have, it's not a disaster, right? But it certainly is going to have its issues. Some of the best deals you're going to find, and this is around the country, are going to be in areas where there are some economic challenges, right? And yet, because there are a lot of deals to be had there, you can really dig deep and find some phenomenal flips, phenomenal rental properties. That's exactly what you did.
Pretty much,
right?
yeah.
So you bought it for $40,000.
Correct.
Right? And then what was the rehab budget?
About $50,000. So all in for about $90,000.
All in for $90,000.
Correct.
Okay. So $90,000 all in. What did you sell that for?
$150,000. And that was on the high end because conservatively we were looking at $135,000.
$135,000. Early on, I came and looked at the property. It was a little rough.
Yeah.
Right? The roof was a little bit of an issue. There were issues. No question about it. And so the numbers were not necessarily huge. You wouldn't lose money. The only question was how much money you're going to make. Okay. What were the problems you ran in on that property?
I think that area is more so notorious for plumbing issues.
Okay.
I would say Park Forest, Chicago Heights, a lot of areas in the south suburbs with their sewers and everything, the plumbing was pretty much probably the biggest issue, I would say.
Plumbing was the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what did you sell the property for on the back end? $150,000?
Correct.
Okay, $150,000. And how much did you make on that one?
$41,000.
$41,000.
Correct.
Okay. Now, were you happy with that profit?
Yes, because that was above what we anticipated as far as our selling numbers originally was $135,000. But I was happy whatever I got. You got to understand, this is my first property. I didn't even think I was going to get one, if I'm being honest. Not to be humble, but I never thought I was even going to get one property. So to make $41,000 on my first flip, at one point $41,000 was my salary when I was living in Indiana. So to make my salary off a flip, hell yeah, I was excited.
While keeping your job.
Correct. Keep my job. Correct.
And this is where people are like, will come up to me. They're like, well, Andrew, so you expect me to go to work full time, and then on top of that, do this? Of course.
Yep.
Right? I mean, besides working 40, 45 hours, let's just be honest, what else do you have to do? Right? If not now, when?
Correct.
Right? Because, well, I need some relaxed time. Well, give up on your relaxed time, right? Instead of going home watching TV, you're going to go, after you finish work, go check up on your investment. Nobody else is going to do it for you. So you got to do it for you. And if you're young, you have a reason to do it. If you're older, you have a reason to do it because now you have spouse, you have kids. Because otherwise, guys, listen, there's a saying which is like, if all that you do is work from 9 to 5, all you can do is make a paycheck.
Right.
It's the 5 to 9, which is the extra, is where you build a lifestyle. Right? So you make 40,000 some bucks. Obviously, it's a significant chunk of change. Right? Did you put that aside as reserves?
Absolutely. So the first thing I did was I put about 25, 30% on the side for taxes because, you know, they want their cut.
Sure.
So I was very strategic. A lot of that I also had put on the side for another property. Of course, I, bought my, went on a trip. So I took my wife to Spain.
Okay. You guys went to Spain?
Yeah, I took her to Madrid for her 30th birthday.
Okay. So you rewarded yourself a little bit.
I rewarded her.
Okay. All right.
I guess I was rewarded too because I went on the trip. So
okay, good. Yeah. No, but I mean that's okay, right? Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, right? That you got a small reward out of it,
correct?
Right, which is good, right? And that's because your business, your investment paid for it,
exactly,
right? But yet you don't go spend all the money, right?
Absolutely.
Because sometimes people will have a small win and then suddenly their lifestyle becomes twice as much.
Yeah.
So now they're further behind rather than ahead.
Absolutely. No, 70% of that money I kept in reserves that I still have in combination, compounding with the other property, which I'm sure we're going to get to
Sure.
later. But
okay. So you got that property done. Then you did a second property.
Correct. Park Forest. So right next door.
Okay. What did you buy that property for?
40. It's funny because like purchase and rehab was literally very similar. So I think purchase was 48,000. 47,000.
Okay, 47,000.
And rehab was 48.
Rehab was 48.
Yeah,
okay.
So about 95.
About 95. What did you sell that one for?
180,000.
180,000. Okay. And was it a 2-1? Did you go to a 3? Or what was the situation there?
It was a 3-2. We were thinking about making it a 4th bedroom, but the way the layout was, we ended up instead of making it a 4th bedroom, we just kind of make it we made it an open space. For people who kind of like want to work from home, it's a nice view out in the patio. So we just made that like a work from home area per se.
Got it. Okay. And then who did you work with as far as, did you take that help from your real estate agent, helped you on that, your contractor? How are you doing that?
As far as the team?
As far as your team?
Yeah, so I used my same team I had from my first property.
Okay, the same team?
Yes,
and
just off relationships.
Okay, is that people from Mastery
Correct.
you're using?
Correct, yeah, Mastery folks. Yeah.
So you're just using people from Mastery?
Yep, same private money lender I had, same agent I had, same contractor. I'm very big on if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay, got it. So you've already built a relationship with the private money lender. They know you're a reliable guy, right? You know the agent is helping you, right? They're able to help you. And were they able to give you a lot of suggestions that, hey, do this, don't do this, look at this? And did you follow them?
Yes, I think the difference between the first and second one. First one, I was blind. I mean, it's first property. I was just happy to be there.
Okay.
For my first one. But I definitely felt like I had, in a way, like had something to prove to my lender because she trusted me. And that was something that, like, I'm always grateful for because she didn't have to give me the money for it. So for me, I was always thinking of making sure that she was taken care of first. So I think the biggest difference is this time on my second property, my agent came to the property early on before the rehab to offer suggestions, whereas the first time around, I didn't do that because I don't know what I don't know. And also the agent
you didn't even know how to ask for help.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And also on the flip side, not only that my agent is also an investor, she's also an interior designer. Right. What better person you want to have see your house than an interior designer because she already has an eye for stuff that will automatically help the price go up as far as your ARV number, your your rehab after value. So that was something that I learned from the first property that I carried on to the second, and then we utilized her advice, utilize certain colors that she mentioned, certain schemes, moving certain things around, and ended up making a higher profit because of her suggestions.
Okay. So basically it was Rose was your agent, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So Mr. Shams from Mastery was your agent. Yes. And now on this second property, you ran into some issues, right, in terms of taxes?
Yes, very high taxes.
What happened with the taxes?
I mean, you did a very good job in helping me. I remember we had a session at Mastery where we used my property as a case study, and you were very big on, hey, not only just look at comps, but be strategic and look at comps that have comparable taxes in your area that sold. And I never knew that concept. I was just looking at comps to look at comps, but I never paid attention to the taxes. So once I started paying attention to the taxes, that helped kind of give me more confidence as far as, okay, certain properties do sell, but you have to be very good with your numbers.
Yeah, so think about if you're watching this or listening to this and you're in Tennessee, you're in Florida, you're in like the properties we have in Florida, what's going to happen is a duplex in a certain area. If the taxes on that one are, say, $4,500 or $6,000, everything in that area is going to be $6,000, right? That's just what it is. And that's how it is for 98% of America, I'm going to say, right? But Chicago, it's got its own issues. It's actually one of the best markets to invest in if you understand the market, right? But there are certain suburbs in Chicago where you literally will have a house right next to you, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, where exact same price, $225, both properties are listed, exact same condition. On one, the taxes are $6,500, $6,800. On the one next door, the taxes are $9,000. And on the one next door, the taxes are $12,000. It makes, I know for people listening, they're, well, how come you guys are so dumb? Guys, listen. On a flip, you don't have time to go get those things adjusted because that takes about a year, year and a half. It can be done, but it takes about a year, year and a half, and 2 years. and people are sitting at the assessor's office, you can't just go in and bully your way in and say, oh, okay, some of the neighbors' taxes are lower. That's not how it works, right? And so when you're looking at comps, not only do you have to look at, hey, how many bedrooms, how many baths, what is the condition of the property, what part of town is it in, but now you got to pay attention on, hey, how are my taxes compared to the taxes the guy next door? And this year the taxes may be 7, which people will accept. But next year, suddenly, the taxes are going up to 12. So the buyer buying the property may get qualified, may offer you full price, but then when they they do the final numbers, like, oh my God, there is no way in hell you're going to qualify for that, right? So you had that problem because what were the taxes on the property you just sold?
Oof, close to 8,000.
Close to $8,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in a bread and butter neighborhood for $180,000, $200,000 properties, that's a lot of taxes, right? That's $700, $800, $900 in taxes a month, right? And that just takes a toll on a buyer's affordability to be able to buy a home, and that's going on in the market. You just sold the property,
Correct.
right? And there's a lot of other properties sitting.
Yeah, we got out right on time. Right on time.
Yeah, because across the board, the taxes went up.
Yes.
And they went up even higher than what your taxes are.
Correct.
Right? And so guess what happened? The properties that have the low taxes are selling. The properties that have the high taxes are not selling. Right? So sometime if you're buying a property in that neighborhood, let's say you buy a property for 60, whereas the neighbor next door bought a property for 50, but his taxes are 12 grand, your taxes are 7. Guess which is a better property? Even though you paid 5 or 10 more, yours is a better property, assuming they're in the same condition, because your taxes are less, and you can flip that one, and you can't flip the one next door. Right? So how much do you make on that property?
That one I made recently, which we sold 2 months ago. I made $62,000 on it.
$62,000. So how did that feel?
Damn good. I felt
Damn
proud.
good. Yeah, that's pretty good, right?
That's how much I'm roughly making right now at my job. So to make that off a flip, I'm like, yo, this is crazy.
Right.
You know, so,
So,
I'm happy.
now, I've never met your wife. I didn't even know you were married. I thought you had a girlfriend.
Yeah, I'm married.
Okay, you're married. Okay.
You try to get me in trouble.
Okay, got it. So, is your wife bought into this whole concept?
Oh, well, when we flew.
When you went to Spain?
When I took her to Spain, she was a believer.
Right, she was a believer. Okay.
Absolutely.
Initially, was she kind of like, I'm not sure about this whole
I'll
thing?
be honest. I mean, she was, she's extremely supportive. I was skeptical.
Okay.
I was nervous. Obviously, a lot of stuff we talked about prior, like just, growing up, being black, grew up in the west side of Chicago. This is not knowledge that we know about. So I'm always defensive as far as like, oh, this is a scam. Everybody makes it look easy, but to be a living, breathing testament of it, this was one of the best decisions, has been one of the best decisions and investments I've made in my life.
Hold on. Let me talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Is it easy or is the concept simple and you have to follow through?
The latter.
It's
never easy. Every property I get, I have anxiety. Like, if you're not, I think you mentioned this before, if you're not losing sleep in real estate, you're not doing it correctly. And trust and believe, I have lost significant sleep whenever I have a property because I'm always thinking about what's going to happen or somebody going to break into the property. Like, I'm always on pins and needles, especially managing
Guys, listen,
2 jobs.
This is the only place where people are not losing sleep when you're building a business are people that are on YouTube, and this is bullshit, right? Oh, I sit on the beach, drink margaritas because this is bullshit. Real business people do not talk like this. This is not running a real business. The bigger business you're going to run, this is just a fact of life. The more choices you're going to have, obviously, but the more sleep you're going to lose.
Yes.
Right? Because that comes with running a big business. You have people on payroll. You have responsibilities. You have lenders to answer to.
Yep.
This is not a joke, right? This is, you want to be a big boy, guess what? You're going to have the big boy problems.
Right.
And you just experienced, and what that shows is people who basically borrow money and don't lose sleep are people who are heading for disaster.
Absolutely.
Because they don't care about the investments they've made. Right?
I really want to point, you mentioned something a while ago that, you dropped a lot of gems, but one that really stood out to me was when you mentioned you have to care about your property more than someone else.
Yeah.
And that's why I drove 45 minutes, an hour from where I stayed to Chicago Heights and Park Forest because I can't expect my contractors and agents to have that same desire and feel that I have. I'm the investor, so I got to drive my tail there whenever I have an opportunity to check on the project and what's going on. And I think that's also something that's important for new investors to know about because sometimes, as you mentioned, some people think it makes it look easy and they don't have to show up. No, you have to show up every time, especially when you're newer, one, to learn, but two, to see what's going on so you can learn a thing or two. Like, you have to care about your investment. And I think instant gratification is a thing. Sometimes people want to, oh, okay, I'm just going to let other people do it. But if your name is attached to this, you have to drive your butt there and do the work. And I sometimes feel like that's missed with a lot of people.
No, I mean, it's always, nobody sees the amount of work that goes in. All they see is, oh, yeah. You know, it works for him. It never works. No. It doesn't work. You have to make it work.
Yes.
Right? You have to make it work. That's just how life is, right? So now you make $60,000.
Correct.
So what's the next vacation you're going on? You got a place picked already?
Yeah, we have. So my wife and I are going to Nigeria for New Year's this year.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
Most of the profits I make goes to help doing something with her. So she gets more out of it than me. Like, I'm cheap on myself. I like to spoil other people. But, like, for the most part, if I do anything for myself, I'm probably just going to put it towards another property. Like, I'm very frugal with myself. But I think I got that from, it's funny going back to my parents. Like, I think I've gotten my desire to spend, I got that from my father. My desire to save, I got that from my mother. So a lot of my mother comes out in terms of whenever I sell a property, I always keep 75, 80% on the side to continue to grow the business. I don't have that mindset, oh, I got this money, blow it. Some idiots do that, but like me, I'm always thinking long term, and I've always been like that since I was younger. Just always thinking 2 steps ahead because tomorrow isn't promised, but you never know what's going to happen to your money, and you want to be in real estate for the long term. A lot of people think in short term, like you said, you want to take care of it for 5+ years. A lot of people think, oh, year one, if it's not working, I'm going to quit. No, you got to keep putting in the work.
No, and this is something that I've said it a million times, which is that if you take care of real estate for the first 5 years, real estate will take care of you for the rest of your life.
And you have to keep your job.
You have to keep your job, right? I mean, but what I mean by that is this, guys, listen, no business, right? No business was ever built, right? Even people who are in crypto, yes, 1 in 10 million may get lucky. They have a bunch of money to begin with. They may buy something, and that year it just goes through the moon. But when you look at people who have long-term success, it doesn't matter if it's in marriage, it doesn't matter if it's in business, it doesn't matter if it's health-wise. You look at they, in principle, are stable, long-term people. They're not people who just do stupid things. Now, with social media, with all the stuff, obviously what sells? It's stupidity what sells, right? But you look at people that you want to model after, that we all look up to, right? Why do people look up to people like the Michael Jordans of the world? Not that there's not a lot of great athletes, but most people are only good at one thing, right? Which is there's a lot of people that have earning power, but very few people have the ability to save it. And even less amount of people have the ability to invest it, right? And those are 3 different skill sets. Like, I am not the best saver, but as soon as I earn, immediately I invest. So I never even save the money. So if I'm broke for only one reason, because I have too many assets, right? And that's kind of what you're doing is you're like, hey, man, I'm going to reward myself with something small. We deserve something nice to do, but then rest of it, I'm going to go back, and that takes a little bit of discipline.
Absolutely.
Right? I'm not going to go buy a car. I'm not going to do something stupid. I will have those, but I'm going to put myself in a financially better position. Yes. That's really what you're doing.
Because that's how you build wealth.
Right.
And that's the difference between being rich and being wealthy, and you spoke on that. Like, being able, you can have a lot of money, but a lot of people blow it, but it's different. It separates people when you're one who can save it and really stay in it for the long-term gain.
Okay. So now you have like the flips. You're like, okay, I can, as long as I'm careful, I am strategic, I can kind of do this step by step, right? What's next for you, investing-wise?
I definitely want to look into a rental. I think the biggest thing I'm trying to figure out now is, and I'm glad you brought me on today because I actually want to, get advice from you. I'm trying to really, because I'm renting right now. I'm currently renting a townhouse. My lease doesn't expire until the summer of next year. So I'm in a position right now where I'm trying to decide if I want to one, I'm definitely looking at a buy and hold because I subscribe to the 2 flips, 1 rental strategy. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to decide if I want to house hack, which I feel like house hacking has become a lot more, it's always been kind of a thing. I'm trying to figure out if I want to take that route or continue to build smaller from a single family route from a buy and hold. So I'm really stuck between those two right now as far as what direction I should go in. It's definitely going to be a buy and hold, but I don't know if I want to take the multi-unit route or continue with single families, but from a rental standpoint. So that's actually where my mind is at right now.
So, you got to look at it from this perspective. Number one, what is the next property you find?
Okay.
Right? That you get, like a lot of times what happens is that we start chasing something and then we find a gold mine and we're like, oh, okay, no, I don't want the gold mine. I'm looking for diamonds. Well, no, dude, you got a gold mine in your hands. Use it. And then buy more diamond mines with it, right? So number one, you got to continue what you're doing. Look at what is the next best thing you come up on. Now, you can open your mindset to saying, okay, if I'm going to live, right, figure out a budget for you. Let me just pull a number out of the hat. Let's just say it's $1,500, right? How can I find a property where my payment is no more than $1,000 out of pocket? And I have another person that's going to offset my rent. Right now, I'm paying $1,500 for somebody else. I want to own the property. I want to only pay $1,000, even if it's not a complete offset. Like sometimes what people want to do is, well, I buy a 2-unit or 3-unit. Then I pay nothing. The tenant covers it all, right? Just understand, today the property prices are high, right? I mean, that's just a fact of life. But what if you could live in a property, pay significantly less, have other people live in the same property, meaning on a 2-unit or 3-unit, and your rent went down, and now you own the property. You see where I'm going? Don't go. Now, if you find a property where you get the entire offset, great. Nothing like it. But, man, to me, it's a huge win if you go from $1,500, $1,800 in rent down to $1,000 in rent, $800 in rent. You're paying yourself, number one. Number two, you own the property, right? And you're building equity. You got tax advantage. You got all sorts of advantages. So you do a house hack and you lower your cost of living while owning that property. That's how you have to look at it strategically. And I would look at, because you could go to a quote unquote a C area and find that like that. But the key is going to be is, how do you find it in a B plus A area?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So what I would do is on the weekend, this is something that I'm being dead serious about this, man. I would get a list of properties in say a 10-mile radius here that are 2 to 4 flats. Now, there are not that many of them, number one. So it's not going to be the easiest thing to do. But just go, drop off a flyer, knock on the door. You're good at talking to people. Talk to them and say, hey, me and my wife, we're trying to buy our first property. We can't really afford a lot. I noticed the property is kind of going to foreclosure. If you work with anybody, I would love to work with you, right? And I will do everything to buy if you're sincere, right? And you go, there are people genuinely that may be losing your house, may not want to work with me, that, oh, this guy owns a lot of properties, blah, blah. But they will work with you. They will do business with you, and you can buy those properties. And 100%, there are PMLs in Mastery that'll help you buy it, right? And because now you're going to put in some work to find it. But, man, you find one of those properties or some extra, wholesale it if you find. But if the right situation works for you, where you can either take over the mortgage or you can just buy it with 3.5% down, and we can structure the deal so that you have zero out of pocket. You get to live in the property, you get to rent out the other part of it, becomes a great situation. But in the meantime, do not pass up. If you find a flip, if you find another good rental, don't pass that up. But I would literally make a list, and I would start with the closest, and I would just take an area and just go put out just a flyer. Hey, noticed your property was coming up as a foreclosure. We're looking for a property to buy. And I would just say, hey, we have a limited budget, right? And if we could buy it, maybe we can help you get out of the situation. Maybe we can buy a property, because it's honest, right? And people appreciate that. they will appreciate that, hey, this guy is genuine. He's trying to buy a property for himself, and he's got to get renters to be able to afford a property. Man, it will work for you 100%.
So you're referring to more so like off-market list, correct?
To me, it's, I mean, you can look on properties on MLS, no question, but there's going to be a lot of competition, right? And so off-market is where you have an advantage, right? On the weekends, as far as I'm concerned, you have nothing better to do, right? But to find your own home, right? Where can you spend more time and where can you build equity that's the first thing I would do.
That makes sense.
So for everybody listening, what would you say to them? They're like, oh my God, man, this is great for Torrence, right? What would you say to them?
As far as like advice or?
Yeah, advice.
If you want to get into real estate, you have to have a strong why. Because there's going to be dark days. It's, like you mentioned in business, there's going to be days you lose sleep. You want to pull out your hair. You say, I'm sick of this, but you just have to be very, very grounded, whether it's, your family, kids or whatever it is. Like me, as I mentioned my story early on, it was my parents, they didn't have opportunity to do this. So for me, being a part of mastery and doing real estate, like I always think about this is bigger than me. Like I think about my wife, I think about my parents who passed. I don't have kids yet, but I think about me already putting them in positions to be successful while I'm doing this. And that's how you really leave a legacy. A lot of people use the word legacy, but I want to be a living, breathing testament of it. And I think being able to do real estate is one way I can do it. I think we all have dreams and want to be like athletes because it's like we mentioned that earlier, like it's sexy. It's what everybody want to do. You want to be cool. You want to have all these social media followers, but there's nothing wrong with being a successful business person. One, it's more tangible, but like you mentioned, a lot of athletes, I think that's another good conversation. A lot of athletes go bankrupt. A lot of people don't talk about that. Majority of athletes go bankrupt. So the successful athletes are ones who have businesses after. That's why I'm very keen on like LeBron James is a great example. He's somebody who has his hand in so many different businesses because that's something that's going to expand life after basketball. So that's what I subscribe to. Be a businessman. You don't have to just be an athlete. There's other ways that you could be successful in your trade. So
right. And just guys, please keep in mind, everybody starts small.
Yes.
There is nothing wrong. Everybody, the biggest company started in somebody's basement, garages. It's one step at a time. So, man, this has been awesome because I think this is going to be inspirational to a lot of people, right? Because all of us see somebody that we relate to. And there's awful lot of people that will relate to your story because it might be similar. Right, because they may have grown up in a neighborhood I would consider tough, right? Not have a lot of opportunities, not have a lot of people in our backgrounds believing in us, but it's a step-by-step journey for all of us. So guys, having said that, please make sure you share the podcast, you share it with your friends, with your family. That's how you help us grow. If you know of anybody that would be a great guest, we're always welcome to some suggestions and recommendations. Having said that, you're listening to Andrew on Cashflow for Life, and talk to you soon.